Coming up, a Sad Styles production.
Get into it.
Ooh, okay, Andrew. Early morning record. Let's just warm up a little bit.
Okay.
What do normal people say in conversations?
Yeah.
Hey, what did you get? What did you get up to yesterday?
Oh, I had some work to do, so I did some work. Went to the gym. I met some friends for drinks afterwards. It was good. It was a good day.
Cool.
Yeah. What did you get up to?
Oh, yesterday, like 24 hours ago or so. It was pretty straightforward.
Okay.
I remember I went on a little bit of a hike.
Okay.
Which was fun. Wanted to get the blood flowing. I actually went into a cave briefly.
Whoa.
I explored a little bit. Just a couple purple rubies and a giant ghost-like frog hanging up on the walls. Yeah, no, it was boring. There was nothing really to see there. Yeah,
Did you take a photo or anything? Or?
I shot it in the face with an arrow. You
had an arrow
and
on
stole
you?
its gems. Yeah,
Whoa.
I had an arrow. I just attached apples to it.
Where was this? Like around where we live? Or
pretty close.
Okay.
I just went into my living room and kind of blanked out from there, to be honest. I got like... I know what you're thinking. That's like a boring cave journey. Just another
that's
cave
not
journey.
at all. A boring
So I just
cave
descended through the hard, dense earth up into the sky and shot myself up through a sky cannon. Landed
What
on some
the
sky
hell?
thing. Yeah,
Were you
yeah.
on drugs?
No,
this
I was
drugs?
on the Nintendo Switch. What are you talking about?
Oh,
What?
this is about Tears of the Kingdom, isn't it?
Wait, you saw people in real life?
Yeah, we should talk about this.
God, there's a pandemic going on. Andrew.
I think I need a CAT scan.
You need a CAT scan, and we need to recount our tales from Hyrule this week on the Retrograde Podcast.
And welcome to the Retrograde.
Video game podcast where this week we recount all of our glorious stories from the land of Hyrule.
My name is Andrew Baskin, and with me as always is the bad boy of podcasting, Mr. Bebop himself.
Hey, listen! It's Mikey Aaronworth.
I have so many things I got to talk about. We've done such a good job. If you're new to this podcast, first of all, welcome. We love you.
Yes.
But we do this thing where we always, if we watch a movie or we play a game or something like that, and we use it for the podcast, we never talk about it off podcast. We never talk about it off mic.
That's true. We being the two greatest video game critics that you've never heard of.
Yes. And one of those things is that this has been a months-long process of playing this game, and we have not talked about it all, even though we host a weekly video game podcast.
It's been tough to not talk about the world's biggest video game at the moment on each of our recordings.
Yeah.
Like we've had 6 or 7 recordings since the release of Tears of the Kingdom, and we haven't really spoken about it in depth apart from the first episode where we played through the first hour or so. It's been tough. It's been tough to kind of hold it in because I've got, as I'm sure you do, a ton of thoughts. And not only do I have a lot of thoughts on this game, but I also have so many questions about you, this being your first Zelda game that you've ever played. The amount of times I've been playing this game and thought to myself, oh, Andrew's going to be so fucking lost right now. Or this is not Zelda the way I know Zelda, and we can get into that.
So you're not the only person that said that to me. Yes, I've never played a Zelda game before. This is my first one, but I can tell you it is now no longer my only game I've ever played. Reveal.
Wait, oh, so you played another Zelda game?
I bought and downloaded Breath of the Wild.
Ooh,
So
okay.
I started playing Tears of the Kingdom,
Yes.
and I went, what the fuck is this? The fuck is this? Who the fuck is that? And I kept going like, there are such wild assumptions happening in the game that like, well, of course you got to do this.
Of course.
You stupid idiot. Like
it's the Puripad, you dumbass.
yeah. Why wouldn't you? Like, of course, you know what I mean? And I was thinking like, man, this is crazy. So I downloaded and played Breath of the Wild.
How much Breath of the Wild?
Like tens of hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a bold move.
I thought I deserved this to myself, to you, my faithful companion.
Yes.
And to the D-pads at home.
One of us is faithful.
Yeah. Wait, what?
You're faithful to me, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
Okay. So you're cheating on me. What a way to tell me in front of all these people.
I thought you knew, Andrew.
So it's on me.
I'm a wild Epona out there, Andrew. You can't just chain this thing down.
You can't.
I'm recording a podcast with no shoes on.
Ugh.
No socks on either.
So sexy.
Look at this. Should I do a foot reveal for the camera?
Do it.
All right, if you're
This will
watching
be the
over on
greatest.
YouTube.
This will be the greatest. Oh, fuck me. That was worse than I thought it'd be.
That's disgusting. Why do people like that?
Yeah, I'm not a foot guy.
No, I got
Not
a
foot guy, never will
massive
be.
callus on my big toe.
Oh, fantastic. I'm glad we showed everyone that. Yeah, so I played Breath of the Wild, and using those as counterpoints has been a very interesting experience.
So I'll say this, if you're new to the podcast, and I'm sure, a lot of people are out there trying to consume as much Tears of the Kingdom and Zelda content as you possibly can. So if you're new, thanks so much for giving us a shot. I think that there are a million other video game podcasts out there, all of which will give you a good perspective on Zelda. You know what? Go listen to No, I'm kidding. Don't listen to that. I think there's a really unique element that we can bring to the table in our conversation because you are new to the Zelda formula, even though you've been playing video games your whole life.
Yes.
And for me, I love Zelda, but I don't like open world games. So there's going to be this natural bouncing off of the formula in this game. Not to say that it's bad, but I think you and I are going to be able to offer a different perspective on the game as compared to a lot of other people out there who, rightfully so, only have amazing things to say about it.
I was going to say, I think that's a very fair point because I don't plan on trashing this game, and I don't think you are either, but I don't think we're going to be giving the full glowing, this is the game of my life kind of things that you've been hearing from people. You know what I mean?
I agree. I think it's one of the most impressive games, if not legitimately the most impressive game that I've ever played. It is not my favorite game that I've ever played.
No.
And I had similar criticisms towards Elden Ring for often similar reasons.
Oh, interesting.
And I'm just going to try to bring some of those to the table. But from the outset, I want to say this game is phenomenal. It is a crowning achievement. We love that. So when you hear us criticize elements of the game, and that's not all we're going to do this episode, but when you hear criticisms brought up, we're not trying to pick nits. We're not trying to be the counterpoint. We're just trying to give realistic opinions on something that isn't perfect because nothing is perfect.
I was going to say, God, it sounds like we're talking to our child that we're divorcing. You know, we'll always love you. Things have changed.
It turns out Andrew didn't know I was cheating on him the whole time.
I'm not into his weird feet.
No, hey, they're not that weird.
They're not that weird. You're
they're
right.
Not that weird.
Yep, we can
just
settle on that.
Massive calluses
we
everywhere.
Can settle on that. But yeah, it's just I don't know why we're being so sensitive, but people really love this game, and it's not to say that your opinion is not valid. It's just we have some other opinions on this game.
I know why we're being so sensitive. Because when you talk about because incels for the most part, when you talk about Nintendo, people just really take it personally.
Okay, that is something I wanted to bring up.
Yeah,
Nintendo. I just got a Switch recently, the last year or something like that. So it's been out for a long time. People are very protective of the Nintendo. They really brands.
Are. Yeah.
And Nintendo owned properties and, especially because so many of their games is their own properties and stuff like that, or exclusive to the Switch. And it is a scary thing because the Switch doesn't put out the number of games that the PlayStation and the Xbox does, right? They put out tons. And so when they come out, they feel like real events.
Yeah.
And so people really, cover for them. Like they really cherish them.
Yep.
And so I don't want to yuck anyone's yum. But at the same time, I want to take another perspective at it.
Want to be honest. Want to not be afraid to upset people, which we clearly did in our first opening hour Tears of the Kingdom video on YouTube. If you want to see what people had to think about that, you can go over and check us out on the YouTube. A successful video by all accounts. A lot of very vocal people who are upset with the fact that we didn't really take much to the story of Zelda.
So maybe that's why we're saying this part.
Yeah, I think that's kind of why we're setting ourselves up here. So I have a couple questions that I want to pose, a couple impressions that I want to pose. And I think what we'll kind of do, we're calling this Tales from Hyrule because at the core of what we want to do this episode is talk about some specific anecdotes from our experiences playing Tears of the Kingdom, and in your case, also Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
Like specific stories of a journey we went on or something that happened and kind of expanding on that in relation to the overall world. That'll be kind of what we're moving towards. But I also want to talk about some of these general impressions, some questions that I want to pose to you that I think are prudent given the fact that you haven't had much experience with Zelda and also just getting your impressions on the game. But why don't we start off? This is new to me. I didn't know that you were playing Breath of the Wild.
Reveal.
From the just top down. Breath of the Wild versus Tears of the Kingdom. They are, as much as people thought Tears of the Kingdom was going to be basically DLC for Breath of the Wild, because that's initially what it was intended for, it is a wildly different game. Almost in some ways as different as a sequel can be while playing within the same mechanics. Do you have a preference one to the other, Breath of the Wild versus Tears of the Kingdom?
I absolutely do. It's Breath of the Wild.
Interesting.
And I don't even think it's that close. Yes, they are absolutely in the same world. Yeah. For sure. Absolutely. When you're just walking around and doing stuff, you're like, oh yeah, these are the same things. But it's the mechanics inside the game or how you achieve goals is so wildly different.
Very different.
I was explaining this to my player one, and I'm like, this game's fun because it's like, I'm going to walk through the forest.
Yes.
And I might discover some stuff. And that's fun. And then in the second one, I'm working on my master's degree in engineering. And I can't begin to go like, okay, so wait.
Yes. I feel like a bit stressed out every time I play Tears of the Kingdom. Stupid. Very stupid a lot of the time.
We talk about this a lot. This is a big point that I want to bring up. We talk about this a lot with like Portal or something like that. And we had other examples, but I can't think of off the top of my head. But it's like when you do something, there's sometimes with like Uncharted, like simple games like that, where you do something and you go, I'm the smartest man in the world.
Yes.
No one could have figured this out
Yes.
but me. Somehow Zelda, or Tears of the Kingdom, excuse me, gives me the opposite feeling where they're like, you stupid idiot, you should be able to figure this out. And you're like, there are like 1,000 things in my inventory
Yes.
and I can't figure out how do I put the motor together?
Yep.
Like that kind of thing. And I really, at the end of the day, like, isn't that the opposite of how you're supposed to feel? Aren't you supposed to feel powerful and smart?
In some way, like, I think we're now getting to a point, I mean, we've been at this point forever, where video games have taken on multiple approaches to letting you enjoy your time with them. And some of them are power fantasies. And some of them are more struggle, puzzle, kind of figure it out. I think there are some games that want to make you feel like the most powerful person there is. And there are other games that really want to challenge you. And this is one of the games that is challenging. You're supposed to feel, I think, confused and kind of at wit's end for a lot of it, and live in that state of being, which can be uncomfortable. It's not as booted up like with Breath of the Wild. I remember booting it up and being like, I'm just going to be on a journey, and I'm going to get to where I'm going to get, and it's going to be great. I keep finding myself with Tears of the Kingdom, a challenge starts and I'm like, oh fuck, okay, all right, what are my pieces? What do I have? I'm about to like it's a challenge in Survivor or something. I just have to like get all these resources together and be like, how do I build a shelter? And then all of a sudden you move on somewhere else and you have to build a new one from scratch. And I'm like, I understand the appeal, the playground aesthetic of it, the feeling of like there are a million different things you can do in a million ways to solve every issue. Yeah. But I think the game is its best when there's a very specific, like the shrines. I love the shrines. Give me a specific kind of put me down a little bit more of a narrow path and let me figure something out, as opposed to being in the open world and realizing there are a million different things I can do, a million different ways to get there. And once I get there, a million new ways to do everything. Yeah,
I will say I completely agree with you, because it's kind of a 2 steps forward, 1 step back situation where we talk about all the time on this podcast that games are way too hand-holding these days. Yep. This game is not. It is definitely like drops you and goes like, figure it out. And you're like, all right, cool. And for a lot of that, I really appreciate that. But there are times where that can be very daunting, kind of very, very like your reaction. There are times where I'm like, I get frustrated and I put down the game and I go, well, I'll see you tomorrow.
Sure.
And then I pick up the game the next day and I go, oh, right.
Yes.
And it's like, that really shouldn't be the feeling, kind of. It should feel inspiring to be daunting instead of kind of crushing. And there are a lot of crushing moments where I felt so lost.
Yeah, it's and to be clear, there are times when I do want that, where I do want the challenge and the open world and the feeling of like there are a million different ways that I can achieve my goal. So all I'm going to do is start pulling on threads until I do it. And I keep having to remind myself that process is the game.
Yeah, right.
Getting to the point where you are is not the game. There are 2 things that I have to write down for myself on a whiteboard when I'm playing Tears of the Kingdom. Yeah. 1, Memento. Use Ascend way more often. Yeah. Did you say Memento?
Yeah, just Memento. It's on your forearm. And you're like, right.
One is use Ascend, because the number of times I find myself stuck and I'm like, right, I can just shoot up through dense matter to get to the top of something,
that all the time.
Which is so like, we'll get to that as a mechanic, but it blows my mind. The other thing is the journey is the experience. Yes. Because the number of times I'm like, okay, there's an objective marker on the map. I need to get to this point. And then I look and I'm like, fuck, that's so far away. I have no waypoints to fast travel to. I just have to get there, and I'm getting there and it's like, oh God, there's a river and now I got to build something to get across it. And I realize that the reason why I'm rushing or have this urge to get to the next point is because I'm assuming that that's where the game lies, as opposed to the moment of figuring out how to cross a river.
That's a good point.
And when I can settle into that, and it usually takes me some time, I find that I am really engrossed in the experience. Yeah.
I think that's totally fair. And I agree with you. It is, you look across the map sometimes because you're in a high point perspective, and you can like look and go like, oh, I got to go over there.
Yes.
Like, oh my God. But you're right. That is the game. And it's, sometimes, especially as a complete newbie that I am, sometimes the fact that people are describing it as like, this is the best game of all time.
Yes.
This is my favorite game. It's perfect. All this kind of stuff works against it, because since I don't have anything to base it off of in other Zelda chapters and things like that, is that I look at it and I go like, well, is this what this is? It's like if somebody says this is the best movie I've ever seen. Sure. And you go in with those expectations. You're like, well,
I try not to let that. So when people were talking about Breath of the Wild being their favorite game of all time, I do think that affected my ability to enjoy the game. But because I knew where I stood with Breath of the Wild, regardless of the fact that this was like 10 out of 10 across the board, Tears of the Kingdom, I knew what my expectations were. Right. And I think it did exceed them. And I do like a lot about this game, and I do love it, especially, like I said, sinking into those moments of the journey is the game. The problem is even with the journey being the game and recognizing that, sometimes I am on my way to a goal and I look up and I see a mountain, a sheer wall, and I'm like, okay, so this is going to be the next 5 minutes of my life. Just just that dumb crawling shit, and you're like, okay, I guess just holding up on my joystick is just going to be my life for 5 minutes.
Right, yeah.
And that isn't fun, but I guess it's part of the experience of loneliness and desolation, and makes getting to that point be that much more exciting or fulfilling in a way, in the same way that going on a hike in real life can be, with the downside that you're not actually getting exercise in this game. I don't know. But that brings me to this point, because you talk about how it's not very handholdy.
No.
And I agree with that to a large extent. However, some things are incredibly handholdy, and when they decide to do, like, they'll give you way too much exposition to do a simple thing. The cutscenes, which are not cutscenes, just like the dialogue back and forth, fucking sucks in this game.
Yes.
And I want to skip past all of it. I'm barely reading anything that has to be saying. And the criticism I always get is, well, you're not reading it, that's why you're not liking it. No, I've read it. It sucks. I want to skip right past it.
Well, I read it once.
Exactly.
And then the next 20 times I had to deal with it, I was like,
I'm like,
whoa.
I get it. I know what I have to do.
Are the words different this time? Because then I would be like, oh, I understand. I am missing something. Yes. If all of a sudden, like the 10th time, the guy's like, you again. I'm like, whoa, huh? We're talking about the shop. We're talking about that kind of stuff.
Yes,
like,
all that stuff.
Holy smokes. Yeah, it is weird to me. It feels odd where they have placed story or structure, where they've placed structure and where they've not placed structure.
Yeah.
There are times where you're taught something new and you're kind of dropped in the middle of nowhere and go, like, figure it out. And you're like, okay, cool. And if that was consistent across the board, that would be one thing. But then there's elements with like, I don't know, some mechanics where it feels so structured that you're like, where the hell is this coming from? So let's get whiplash.
So there are, sometimes they nail it right in the middle. Mm-hmm. And this is actually one of the tales from Hyrule that I wanted to tell. Can we take a little bit of a break from asking the questions and impressions to give my interpretation of what is masterful, unmatched, some of the best video game design and structure I've ever experienced in a game. And this is something that this game does really well, as it naturally funnels open world experiences into what we would more traditionally think of as levels. So you're running around the open world and finally you see something and you realize that you're now on a little bit of a path, even though it's not a defined path. You're like, oh, there's a way to get from point A to point B, and this journey of A to B is a side quest within the overworld without it being named such. In those processes, the way that they introduce mechanics and expand upon them and then double down on them just in this little thread of point A to point B is so impressive and masterful to kind of draw out my understanding of what the game is expecting of me. So this is one that I had. There was a sky island that I found myself on. You land on it from the tower that's near Death Mountain, the Skyview Tower. And it's pretty obvious. It's like, this is where you need to go from the tower, because the tower shoots you up and then you can see all the different directions that you can go. And there's usually a couple islands that you can land on. You get into that tower using the rewind mechanic, because the tower itself is blocked. And there's a guy there who's standing there who says, the top of the tower is open, but this door won't open. We need to get in from up top. And as you're looking around, you see a chunk of rock fall from the sky. So you're like, okay, earlier on this journey, a kid at a nearby stable told me that you can find falling rocks and rewind them. So I'm like, oh, there's a falling rock. I can rewind that. You go on the rock, using the knowledge that the game naturally funneled you towards, get on the rock, it shoots you up when you rewind it. You jump into the Skyview Tower, the Skyview Tower shoots you up, and you land on this sky island now, okay? So now you're here, and you got there as a result of having used the rewind mechanic, but you're not really thinking that much of it. On this thing, there's a mine track. There's a little mine track area, and the mine tracks are facing down. So I'm thinking, okay, we got to take these mine carts down the track and go wherever this is going to lead us. There's an enemy there. You kill the enemy. As you kill it, another enemy from another Minecraft above you, mine cart, shoots onto the Minecraft. He's just reading Hitler's book.
You're like, oh boy, watch over this guy.
I heard it's actually worth reading, even though he's a problematic character. Hitler got so canceled, by the way.
Yeah, problematic is a very good way to describe Hitler.
It's problematic.
This is a problematic member of history.
But what a speaker.
Oh my God, an artist too.
Why do people feel the need to say that?
I don't.
He was such a good orator, though.
Yeah,
Who cares?
I'm sure there's lots of stuff he was good at.
Yeah.
Oh, he cooked such a good pork schnitzel. And you're like, oh, okay. You're like,
So a minecart comes down onto the island. You kill the enemy on it, and the minecart has a fan and a battery. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to use this minecart to get down the track wherever I need to go next. And then I remember, just because it had been ingrained in me twice subtly earlier, wait, the rewind mechanic. And I look and I see the minecart going up. And I'm like, well, I'm sure I can just sit on this minecart and rewind it. It'll take me back up to where this minecart goes. It'll probably be a little offshoot of the journey because I know I'm supposed to go down because that's where the track is leading. But I'm going to go as like, you know, in God of War, when you're on the main path and then you go to a side path just to get a little bonus item. I'm like, that's all I'm going to do. I rewind, it takes me up. There's another enemy there. It looks like this is the end of the path. I'm like, okay, cool. This was the side thing. I'm going to go back down the minecart. As I turn around, have you seen on the Sky Islands how they have kind of like the hanging chests?
yes.
So I see one of those and I'm like, oh shit, there's a chest. I got to find a way to get that. Usually in those chests in the Sky Island, there are maps corresponding to areas in the depths where you can go find like bits of armor and stuff like that. So usually the puzzle with these, because you're on a Sky Island, you have to shoot down the chest and have it land on land so it doesn't fall all the way down to the bottom. So I look down over where it's hanging and I realize that there's another bit of land down there. So I get the thing. And because my eyes were drawn to this area where otherwise I would have just gone back to the main area, they're drawn there because the developers had put a hanging bit of candy essentially in this chest. I realize there's land there. I go down there. I realize I can now ascend up to a higher place. I get up to the higher place from that thing. And once I get up there, it's the path continues forward to an eventual shrine. And I realize I thought I was like gaming the system by finding these bonus areas, but these breadcrumbs were being laid for me based on what the game was teaching me 30 minutes earlier. It was instilling in my head and knowing it was going to catch my eye with a hanging chest, which was going to look down to the ground. And when I was there, I was going to realize I can use ascend to go up and get to the top. And that's actually the path they wanted me to go on, as opposed to this initial area. Was just so mind boggling. They knew what I was going to want to do. They knew, and they knew what it was going to take to turn my attention somewhere else and then feel like I was beating the game and its own mechanics. Meanwhile, I was just playing into their own hands. That is such a fucking, and that's
you're doing exactly what they wanted you to do.
Thinking that I was going around what they were trying to do. That type of game design in a game that's 100 hours and in this little path that is a splinter of the overall game. How they put this much love, care, attention, and detail in hundreds of little offshoot journeys within the world is mind-boggling.
It really is. Like, because that's very similar to my first tale too, is that, in the beginning, you know, I was so new to this game and so new to the franchise in general that I was trying to figure out what to do. And I'd only had a couple of powers at this point, but you're getting the Ultra Hand, you're starting to fuse things together. You're like, oh, that can make a raft.
Yes.
Okay. And I can put a fan on the raft and I can get across. Okay. Kind of thing. But the controls were an issue for me in the beginning.
I still kind of struggle with them sometimes. Yeah.
I'm not trying to hammer on it, but I still struggle with the controls. Yeah. And so it was a lot of like chopping down a tree.
Yep.
And then I take the tree and the tree rolls off the island. And I'm like, fuck. And I'm like, okay. And then I'm like, where's other trees? And then I'm like, all right, I get a tree. And then I'm walking with the tree, down the hill. And I get there and I fuse it. And then I twist it and they roll off together. And I'm like,
wow, what the fuck?
And I'm like, now I'm out of trees.
Yes.
And I got to really, now I'm like, okay, new idea, long way around. Let's go this other way around.
That you're leading like a boardroom pitch with no one else.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, new idea. There's like one Korok in the corner, like, I just need to find my friend.
Crush him with a rock. It is like if you were the leader of a group and they're like, all right, and you're like, and it goes off the cliff and you're like, turn around like, new plan. Everything's okay, I promise. The reason I'm bringing this up is because very quickly after that, you get rewind. And it's just teaching you to go like, hey, you should get good at this.
Yes.
But if you don't, like I'm going to let you master it on your own.
Sure.
And then give you the ability to cheat afterwards.
Yes.
And
that's a great point.
I really appreciate that level of organic teaching in the game.
Yes.
That they're like, no, you got to struggle. And now you don't have to anymore.
So
it's kind of like waypoints or future travel. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah.
But done in a way that doesn't feel like click a button to get to a waypoint. It's baked into the DNA of the game itself, where they could have, like, I think about things like Ascend and things like Rewind. It's basically the developer saying, here's a bit of a shortcut, but we're going to write it into the story of the game. Like Ascend, the story is, it started as a way that people who are playtesting the game or the game developers could just quickly get out of caves and stuff.
Wow.
They would just shoot themselves. They would clip through the game world and just get somewhere else. And they're like, why don't we let the players do this? Because clearly we want to do it to avoid having to backtrack all the time.
Yeah.
And it works so well. In the same way where I'm sure game testers were like, we have to chop down trees, but because of the way that ragdoll physics and physics in general work in this game, maybe not ragdoll, but the things can roll down hills, let's just let them rewind it. And let's be really lenient with rewind. When you press it, everything stops. You can rewind things that are really far away.
Yeah.
It's just a way to, and this is something I think the game doesn't quite do enough, but does in these spurts. It respects the time of the player.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because instead of making you rewind everything and go back and just be like, okay, now you have to like leave the area and come back so that tree respawns. Right. It's like, just bring it back with rewind. It's easy. Don't worry about it. Yeah,
totally. And I do appreciate, like I was saying, like fast travel. Like they usually give you fast travel in some game after you've put in like 50 hours.
Yes.
They're like, you've struggled enough.
Yep.
Here you go.
Yeah.
But I was gonna say is that in this one, and especially after playing Breath of the Wild too, is that this one, you feel like a game creator. So that's very funny that you tell that story because that makes a ton of sense. In another word, you feel like God.
Yes.
And it's very odd when you go back and play Breath of the Wild. You're like, so wait a second, he's God now? Like he could just do whatever he wants? Like it's so odd. You know what I mean? Even though it's very cool and you do feel incredibly powerful.
You do.
Even as you struggle.
For sure. Yeah. For sure. You know that you have the capability to solve these problems, even if you can't quite figure it out at that point. And the way that I like that you brought up the whole idea where you had to learn how to do it without the additional tools before they give you the tools. That's a very Death Stranding-esque thing. And I bring that up on purpose because this game is weirdly more of a it is more like Death Stranding than it is like Breath of the Wild. It's so journey focused and it's so about like, how do you conquer this landscape as opposed to how do you fight through this landscape, like fight the enemies in this landscape in a way that Death Stranding is. And Death Stranding does the same thing. You just carry these heavy boxes. They're off balance. You just have to really watch your foothold. Now that you've done an hour with that, now we're going to give you some leg stabilizers. So don't worry about it. But don't get stupid because the leg stabilizers can die. You still have to climb mountains. Then you climb mountains. It's like, well, now here's a car. And now, well, here's this and here's this. And you end up forgetting how hard it was to struggle in those initial ways, but you never quite forget the journey of how you got to build to where you are. And that leads me to a question that I wanted to bring up. Because naturally, with the unlocking of new abilities and the sharpening of your own skills as a player of the game, your character evolves and your abilities evolve. Not just by unlocking new ones, but by the understanding of how you control the elements within the game. That said, a lot of games in an open world like this, especially RPGs, would have an element of XP and then leveling up and making you build like, okay, now you can build faster and stronger and climb longer and move faster and all that stuff. There's no experience points in this game. Would that make this game better or worse based on the way you play games?
That's funny. Wow, I hadn't thought about that. You're right. Isn't that weird? That's such a trope that they would have relied on. You know what? I hate to say, the inventory management is something I wanted to kind of talk about. Okay. And I feel like I think if you had just had experience points that you could have upgraded things, I think we could have avoided having hundreds of items in your inventory. I understand this is a big part of the Zelda games, now going back and looking at it. I struggled sometimes combining things and finding things and going like, oh, right, I can make this to cook this together and, you know, whatever. 100%. And it's so unwieldy sometimes that just the scope of it, that if you only had a few things that you curated and chose to upgrade, maybe you do that. But at the same time, and I don't want to make anyone mad, this is a part of the Zelda games. Yep. So I maybe don't want to fundamentally change the essence of these games in general.
That's a good point. And I think, so the unwieldiness of inventory and crafting and all that stuff is maybe my biggest issue with the game. When I have to sit down and cook meals in this game,
you don't even like doing that in real life.
I hate doing that in real life. I get good food and Chef's Plate and that stuff delivered, and I'm like, just do it yourself. But you know what Chef's Plate comes with? All the ingredients I need in one place. It sounds like an ad for them, along with instructions on how to do it.
Try retrograde as a code. See if it works.
See if it might
know. Maybe it works.
If it does, order a couple boxes.
Yeah.
Why don't we have the ability to select from a group of recipes in a menu to just make those meals?
Yeah.
I hate, and I know there is a refined recipe structure, so don't come at me in the comments about that. I know you can pick up an item and say recipes with this item and select this one, but there should just be a list that you go through of saying like, here are endurance recipes, here are power recipes, here are health recipes, and just click on it. And based on what you have in your inventory, you can just fucking make it if you've made it before.
And if you've made, that's what I was gonna say.
That's it.
If you've made it before, it should unlock. Then you go like, do you want to make that?
100%. And you make it once, and then you have to go through and grab the same amount in your inventory, go out of the pause screen, drop it, and then see that fucking cinematic again. Like, when I say the game respects our time by having things like ascend and things like rewind, why don't they respect our time with the unwieldy nature of inventory and inventory management?
Yeah.
Why don't they respect our time with interfacing with the game? Like, why can't I customize the controls? Why can't why can't
Nintendo.
Nintendo, like,
I know.
they come so close to doing the best things, and then they just Nintendo it up for some fucking reason. And maybe I'm just an old salty gamer now that it bothers me more than some people, but it's like, fuck, you guys know you're being dicks about this. Just change it.
Sometimes I feel like they do that just to be proprietary and like, that's the way we do it. You won't change the way we do it.
Yes.
They're like, and in certain parts I go, I respect that.
Yeah.
And then when I'm frustrated by things, I'm like, God damn it.
Yes.
Or
Yes.
the fact that every game is like $85. But yeah, it's like, you know
what Nintendo reminds me of? Nintendo reminds me of, if you've ever like coached a team, or even if you've been on a sports team and there's that one kid who's just hucking up 3-pointers from at range, and you're like, don't play the game like that. We're playing as a team. You shouldn't be doing this. We're looking at Nintendo. We're like, make a better hardware system and then put the game out on that. Bring Tears of the Kingdom out a little bit earlier. Expend whatever it is. Yeah. And then they throw up this lob and you're like, don't do that. And it's perfect, kind of. And you're like, I guess you're not coachable.
Yeah, it's the no, yes.
Yes, no, yes,
like
exactly.
They go for a shot and you're like, no, and they hit it and you're like, okay, I guess.
All right, fuck.
Yeah,
you guys keep doing you.
You know what you're doing, I guess.
Yeah.
No, I completely agree with you. You know, there is a certain amount of Nintendo that like that kind of works. And I would say the other thing about the inventory system I kind of wanted to bring up was the fact that it's just, and I know there's a style of game that this works for. It's just not a game I'm very familiar with, is that when you go to attack somebody and you're like, fuck, I'm going to light these people up. This is going to be great. And then you're like, all right, choose this. It just takes you out of the battle that you're like, okay, now wait. Oh, click.
I totally agree. And I've seen, this is something that I really struggle with this game. And we talk about this on the podcast a lot, where we don't like a certain mechanic in a game, but we've seen people use it in a way that is incredibly impressive. So clearly it is made to be able to work in a way. And in Tears of the Kingdom, combat looks like it can be unbelievable. But I don't have it in me to play the game that way. And because of that, I agree. Combat can often feel pretty janky and and slow.
Like broken up too.
And loose. It's like I'm watching someone play a different game when I see some of these videos. So clearly it's in there to be like that if you want it to be. But combat ends up being this kind of integral part of the game that's sort of unavoidable.
Yeah. I remember you brought this up once with Last of Us 2.
Yeah.
Where you're like, the combat's not my favorite part. But then you watch videos online and somebody is seamlessly going opponent to opponent, duck, cover, stab.
Making it look way more fun and
way
fast.
more. And you're like, what the fuck is this game?
So people look at that and they're like, well, just play it that way and you'll enjoy it. And I'm like, but that's easier said than done. The one thing, going back to the experience points things though, is I don't ever feel like I have to engage in combat, because there's no benefit really apart from gathering some resources to engaging in a group of bokoblins or whatever it is. There's always like some treasure or something like that, which if you want it, you can get it there. But this got me thinking of another question.
Okay.
And I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. I love my time with this game when I'm just going from point A to point B. I find the combat incredibly frustrating, and I find the combat weirdly draws me out of the experience of the game. Would this game be better without combat?
That's exactly what I was going to say. There are times where I go like, does combat need to be in this game at all?
100%.
It feels like it's like part of the game because it's like, well, you got to be able to fight somebody.
You got to swing a sword.
You got to master sword for a reason, guys. Like you got to light them up. Do you? Like, what if there was no opponents whatsoever and this was just leaning onto the puzzle game that it really is at its heart?
Same thing with like Death Stranding. There is combat and you really don't have to engage in it all that often, but you can. maybe this is kind of the same thing, but I feel like more often than not, I'm in a situation where I have to engage in combat in Zelda, and I just don't enjoy it.
No.
And that's not to take anything away from the people who do, but it's not fun. I feel like the lock-on mechanic sucks. I feel like the controls just don't mesh with the way I've learned controllers after FromSoft games. Like, if I could remap the controller, I bet you there's a way I could find enjoyment in combat in this game. But the fucking X's and Y's and B's and A's, like, I know, again, I just sound like a dumb gamer.
I was going to say, because the next couple of points in my head are negatives, and I just want to go, like, I'm going to say a negative and go 9 out of 10.
Yes, like 100%.
That's where I'm at. I just, like, 9 out of 10. Great game.
Yeah, but I agree. I like this conversation of in general in gaming, do we need combat? Does a game need to have everything? And I don't think this game does need it.
Yes, I think the future of games is not like only combat. It's kind of like talking about superhero films and like the world has to end. You're like, every movie, like, you know, and it's the same thing with this. Like, everyone, I got to kick the shit out of this guy. Like
100%.
I feel like that was the beginning of video games, because combat or elimination was important to how games worked.
It was the language of video games back then. It was like victory was defeating as opposed to experiencing.
Right.
And I think that my favorite moments in this game are experiencing, and every time I have to defeat, I'm like, fuck, I guess I'll engage in this, but I don't really want to. As I keep saying, the journey is the game. I'm like some fucked up Marshall McLuhan type or something like that, except I definitely get down more than Marshall McLuhan.
The first incel.
The first incel was Marshall McLuhan.
Yeah, I don't know if people know that.
Oh, he was.
Yeah, that's like something. Update his Wikipedia, guys.
The media is the message. Women are the problem.
I hate myself and my genitalia. Oh, that's the message.
That's the message. So with that kind of lean into the journey is the experience thing, I want to talk about when this game really clicked for me.
Okay.
And maybe you have a similar moment of when or if you're still waiting for it, I don't know. But I had this moment the first weekend the game came out, and I had the ability to just sit down and play it for 4 hours in a row or something like that. And my whole plan that night was to just play Zelda. And I need to stress, I don't often have 4 hours in a row to play a game, but I felt like it was necessary for this one. And after you get to the central, like you finish the tutorial area, I'm intrigued. You get to the central town where you meet Pyrrha, you get the Pyrrha pad, the first Skyview Tower, all that stuff. I'm intrigued. I'm not really engrossed in it yet. And you get the environmental anomalies on your map. And they keep saying, go to the Rito village in the northwest of the map. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll head over there, whatever. So I start off on my journey, and this at this point is like 45 minutes into my 4-hour playthrough. And I keep finding myself in these situations where I'm like, fuck, I know I have to get to this point, but it looks like the map doesn't want me to go this way because there's this massive river here. But like, oh, there's a couple planks of wood and a sail, so I'll put that on here. The river's moving really fast. I got to get to the other side of it. I find a way to like kind of just barely get there, and not exactly as my plan worked out. And yet I still end up on the other side of the bank, and I'm like, okay, new plan, because I'm in a different area. Now, how do I get up this thing? And I'm going, and I realize at this point that each of the environmental obstacles are serving as a level, a quote unquote traditional level within the game.
Yeah.
And the overall this branch of the storyline consists of multiple levels, which are environmental objectives.
Yeah.
And somehow, in spite of the fact that all of my plans to cross each of the objectives failed in a very specific way against how I really planned on succeeding in that, I ended up getting exactly where I wanted to be through, I passed by a stable. I passed by some things which it turns out were like key moments in the game, or key things that you shouldn't have missed. Even though it felt like I was just doing it all wrong, I got there, and the experience of overcoming and recalibrating and resetting was so like, that's when I was like, okay, I know what this game is. This game is, again, the journey.
Yeah.
And I'm all for it. That moment in the game was one of the greatest moments I've had playing a video game in years. I fucking loved it.
I see, that's great. I love that story kind of thing. I'll tell you when mine clicked. I'll tell you exactly that. When mine clicked, I clicked.
No, Andrew.
No. I always think about the Succession thing where Tom's interviewing him and goes, "Did you read Mein Kampf?" And he goes, "Well, yeah, a couple times." He goes, "Was there words you didn't understand?" When I realized when I was on Sky Island in the beginning, and I'm doing things, and I am frustrated.
Yes.
Because it's all new. It's, and I get that. Probably some people had a much easier time than me, but it was like, holy shit. But
This is Sky, like, still the tutorial area? Yeah.
That's what I was going to say.
Yes.
You realize when you get down, you're like, that was a tutorial.
Yes.
I see now. And it really was clicking when I met other humans.
Okay.
Or whatever. I don't know. Are they
Elves?
humans? Elves?
Hillians?
Yeah, sure. There you go. All the above. A and B. And so I realized when I met other people, I was like, oh, this is the game.
Yes.
Oh, this is what I got to do. And the first cave and the first, I was like, oh, okay.
That's great.
Thinking the whole thing was up there like some kind of weird mist game. And I was like, oh, is this what Zelda is? And then I get down there and I'm like, okay, there are a little bit more linear missions and there are, I get it now.
I do like how they had their hand on the reins for
Yeah.
a while. They're like, we need to make sure you know all the things that you can do
Totally.
before we let you go explore the rest of this game, which I like,
I do
because
too.
if they didn't compartmentalize, it would have, as it often still does, felt way too overwhelming, I think, at any
100%.
given point.
Okay, can we also just talk about the voice acting in some of this? Why does every woman... Okay, yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about. What is that? You're like, what?
What?
I'm just trying to buy something. Yeah, you're like, the goblins took my family. What?
I'll have, excuse me, I appreciate your wares. I like this general store which sells butter, herbs, and 5 bundles of arrows. May I have 5 arrows, please?
Oh my God. It's like, why?
Why is it happening?
What lonely developer figured this one out? They're like, this is the way it should be.
Okay, so 5 bundle of 5 arrows. Appreciate it. Just so you know, every barrel I break out there has 5 arrows in it.
Yeah.
So these can't be very expensive, right? How much are those? 100 rupees? No thanks.
No, yeah, I'm good. I'm going to go to the other one. Also, there's price fixing in Hyrule.
Well, 100%.
They have all got together and again, so we're just charging 100, right?
100 for everything.
Okay, if anyone fucking charges under, we're going to break their legs.
We're gonna break their legs. I
Like-
want a Skyrim type thing where I can steal clothes from places
Yes.
and be like Bad Link.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, like to get in behind, maybe
Yeah.
light it on fire. I don't know. The whole thing.
Light the whole thing on
Yeah,
fire.
just like out of bitterness.
I'm about to light it on fire, and I'm like, pay me to protect your store.
It's exactly that's.
How much you say that hood was? 300. Pay me 300 rupees to protect your store.
Yeah, and I can take whatever I want.
Yeah.
Link just invented the mafia.
Yes,
He
exactly.
invented protection services.
Yeah. Not the boss, the Bob Cobb. The boss Coblin.
Boss Goblin.
The economy in this game is wild.
So wild. Someone needs to show me a conversion rate somewhere.
Yeah, no thanks.
Yeah.
So I like this idea of going from the tutorial area down to the ground, and very close to where you land.
Yeah.
After the initial tutorial area, there's the ability to go into the depths. Now you can't go right away through the chasm into the depths. Have you spent any time in the
Little
chasm? It's crazy because like a lot of people I know either have never gone down there
Yeah.
or haven't spent much time down there. I think the depths are a fascinating area.
Yeah.
They're completely dark. Anyone who's listening this far obviously knows what they are,
Yes.
but you basically light your way using bright bloom seeds.
Yes.
And everything is dangerous. You kind of have a limited amount of health because every time you're hurt, you can't regenerate hearts until you get back into like a giant light area.
Yeah.
My first experience in the depths, I thought I was just going to poke around there for a bit. I ended up spending 3 hours in there.
Oh, wow.
And actually, to be honest, really enjoyed my time, which is weird. It kind of goes against what I was saying about combat in the game, but it felt very Dark Soulsy, and it ratcheted up difficulty in a way that I didn't expect them to do. And without making it just like incredibly difficult combat, it just made it more plodding in a way that I associate difficulty with like a FromSoft game or something like that. But it got me thinking. You have the ground, just the regular ground in this game, mountains, rivers, all that stuff, towns. You have the depths with all of its difficulty and exploration, risk reward, all that sort of stuff, the feeling of discovery. You have the Sky Islands, which are airy and puzzle focused and all that. 3 Tears of the Kingdom,
nice.
which I realized way too late. Made me feel real stupid when I realized I hadn't gotten that pun. Of the 3 of those and all the different things that they offer, do you have a favorite and a least favorite area?
Oh, that's a good question. My depth story, by the way, I poked down there, got killed really quickly, and I was like, not ready for this. I'm going to keep going around here. Yeah.
Not a bad idea.
Yeah, that was pretty much.
It's scary. It's stressful being down there.
Yeah. Do I have a favorite one? I don't know if I do. I think they're all, I don't know, like it's kind of such a platitude, but it's like they're all so different that they kind of provide different things.
Sure.
And so I will say I keep switching because there are times where you're like, I need this, I need that.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Or that's the experience I'm looking for kind of thing.
It's funny because I associate the sky areas with travel and puzzles more than I do combat, because you have a couple of the like guard things, like those Zononite whatever that you can kill, but it's generally not focused on combat, with the exception of the flux flux constructs that you find there sometimes. However, traversal and puzzles being a big element of those areas is great, but the risk of falling off at any time without the ability to rewind yourself back up there is incredibly frustrating. So my least favorite tier is the sky area for sure. I usually like a bright area in games, but the idea of like potentially you can fall and just have to find your way back here is so incredibly frustrating to me.
So much in this game.
Right. It's just annoying, because you would think with all of the hand-holdiness to kind of give you developer tools to save you time, they would have some way to get yourself back on a sky island. When I'm the number of times I've been looking to ascend up to a higher area on a sky island, and because it's looking up, I don't see where I'm walking, and all of a sudden I'm just moving farther and farther away, and I'm falling down. I'm like, fuck, and you just have to start again through a sky tower. I hate that. It
needs a mechanic of like, or a cliffhang.
Yes,
it's got
what a simple solution that would be, and how much it would save.
100%. Like that's the only thing, and I understand like the game is difficult. Would you say the game is difficult?
I would say
okay, yeah, me
difficult.
too. Yes. Yeah. It's difficult, and I understand that's probably one of the parts of difficulty. It's like, well, you should know where you're walking. Like, I guess.
Well, difficult. I mean, I think it's difficult in the combat specifically. Maybe I'm just not meshing with it, but I remember Breath of the Wild. I barely ever died in that game. I'm dying all the time in this game.
All the time.
And this brings me to my next little anecdote, tale from Hyrule.
Ooh.
I complained in Elden Ring all the time about its difficulty and how I wanted to play it like a traditional FromSoft game, and it wouldn't let me. And I kind of bashed my head against the wall to continue playing it. I didn't want to give in to any of the concessions like summons or using magic, or like kind of expanding my ability to make the game easier naturally for me. In Tears of the Kingdom, I was like, fuck it. I'm done getting I was getting one shot by every enemy in the game where I was. I don't know if I was in the wrong place or whatever in Tears of the Kingdom. Finally, I looked it up. I'm like, I'm not doing this again with another 100-hour game.
Yeah.
And the great fairies can improve your armor, which really, really helps you take a couple more hits. I don't care if I have to constantly eat meals and replenish my health. I just don't want to get one shot. It makes me so angry when that happens, and it was happening all the time. So this anecdote is me finally, as a gamer, like take a step back and from like a meta perspective, changing the way that I play games and being like, I'm not going to try to make this more challenging. I'm going to make this game as easy for myself as possible in combat, because I don't enjoy the combat that much. I'm going to seek out all the great fairies, get my armor up as much as I can, and then play the game. And when combat comes, I'm not going to have to worry about it that much. Which is and it made me feel better about it.
I agree. Yes, I agree with you. Yeah, I think that's totally fair. One of the things I'd also like to talk about, and I know this is going to be deemed as kind of a negative, but I'm very impressed that this game is inside of the Nintendo Switch. Like,
oh my God, it's fucking
I can't
wild.
believe that the size of this game is inside of there without lag, without this stalling or anything like that.
I find that there is a little bit of stuttering for me. I don't, maybe it's just an earlier Switch. I'm not sure, but there are frame rate issues and there is a little bit of stuttering. I think yeah.
See, I have the newer one, I have the OLED one,
So, you did get the OLED?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
I think that might be the difference. So I am very impressed by that. The other thing is, when people go, this is the most beautiful game I've ever seen. There is a style to this game.
It's very stylized.
It's very stylized. It's no different than a Cuphead or a Hollow Knight or something like that. Is saying this is artistic style. It's not realistic.
Yep.
And we are going to, just do that. And in that way, I respect that.
Yeah.
I just find it to be all very flat.
Yes.
It's all pastels.
Yes.
And it's just it's just like a painting at all times, which at times people can say, well, that's very pretty. And there are times where I look to the many islands or the many things you can look and you go, wow, there's a lot going on. I'm not staggered by the beauty of it.
No.
It's more the scope that I'm staggered by.
It is, I can't imagine that people aren't purposely lying to themselves when they don't say the reason this game looks the way it looks is because of hardware limitations. This is not Nintendo saying, let's make the most beautiful game we can.
Yes.
It's saying, let's do what we can with the hardware. And don't get me wrong, they did a great job stylizing it and making it work within the bounds of the Nintendo Switch. We've seen how difficult that could be with like Pokemon Arceus and the bugs and glitches and the draw distance issues that they've had with that game since launch. It works and it's massive and it is gorgeous. But is it the most beautiful game I've ever seen? We just played God of War Ragnarok. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
I was gonna say, like, there are so many more, and that's a different style of animation. It's a different style of design, and I get that.
Yeah.
But even then, you put them next to each other, you're like, no, okay, no, wait,
100%.
Like,
and it's not to say Zelda is bad,
No.
but like you even have game developers out. Speaking of God of War, David Jaffe had like a screenshot and he's like, people are calling this the most beautiful game in the world. And it was, an image of a valley with greens and colors and pastels and all that stuff.
From Tears of the Kingdom?
From Tears of the Kingdom.
Okay.
Looked good, but it is not the most beautiful game. And he got dragged so hard. And it's like, look, I get maybe don't take pot shots at other games. That's fine. But like, you can't call David Jaffe an idiot.
Yeah.
The guy's made one of the most successful franchises of all time and just has an opinion like you or I have. The game doesn't have to be the most beautiful game in order to also be amazing.
Says what I was saying earlier, saying if you say it's the best thing of all time and then someone else plays it and you go, well, what? No, right?
Yeah.
And that's also, it's just like you're kind of setting yourself up for failure when you're like, no, planting the flag here, best game of all time, most beautiful game of all time. You're like, okay,
yes,
I guess, and you know what? If you find it that way, that's awesome. Good for you. I just would think that there a harder look would need to be taken.
I think so, and just accept like it doesn't like we said, not every element needs to be better than every other element in every other game.
Yes.
It's an acceptance of like this is the way it is for a specific reason, and they did a great job covering up the hardware issues in the game.
This is the way.
But this is the way. This is the way. Just like they covered up Pedro Pascal's face.
Yeah.
Don't cover up that beauty.
Did you see he kind of admitted, he's like, oh yeah, not really.
Yes.
I was like, but thank you.
He did say that in the first season he was doing it a lot more.
Yeah, he's doing a lot more, and then he's just like, it's heavy and I'm old.
Yeah, and
you're like,
also they don't pay me enough.
That's another one. That's another hill that a lot of people died on. That I was always like, no, he's not in the suit. And feel like, no,
Yeah.
like I'm like, no, he's not. So that was a nice pat on my back. That's an I told you so.
I'm gonna take
a couple laps.
So.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have been surprised if I definitely thought that he was in the first season.
Yeah,
which
for the majority
he probably
yeah.
was. I had no idea. It did not surprise me. It would have been cool if he's like, yeah, I'm in there. But like, also, why? when you get a promotion at work, you don't also still have to do the shit that you were doing in order to get that promotion.
It's also just like a wild misuse of funds.
Yes.
And you're like, we have to pay Pedro every day to have his face covered.
Yes.
And you're like, well, wait, could we use
I'm sure
the stunt
Disney,
double?
the happiest people that they're not paying Pedro Pascal to be in there is Disney. Like they don't want to be.
When he does ADR booth for 4 days and does a season. And
Yes.
Like, well, that was fun.
That's it.
Hey, do I have my mask off this season? They're like, no, that's a big part of the story. And you're like, got it. Great. Awesome.
Good.
I can shave? Okay, cool.
We're making that the Mandalorian way, so we don't have to pay you as much anymore. Here's a question, kind of a palate cleanse before we get into our next ones. Am I the only one kind of jacking off every time I'm talking to one of the great fairies? Like not fully jacking off, just kind of jacking off.
Just kind of jacking off.
Just a little bit of jacking off.
A little tease.
Just kind of like a little rub.
Yeah.
Little rub as they're talking in between dialogue. Am I the only one? I guarantee you I'm not.
Oh, no, you're not.
Yeah. Am I the only one to admit it in a public podcast?
The first, maybe. The bravest.
But not the last.
Not the last.
Let me know in the comments.
Yeah, Marshall McLuhan's going to come out and just... I would agree with you. It's sexual.
Sexual.
It's exciting.
And healing.
The Great Fairies, yeah. You said Power Fantasy earlier, and I'm like, that'd be a good name for a bar.
A power fantasy.
Hey, well, are you going to go to Power Fantasy?
Yeah,
100%. Yeah.
It's
They have
gonna be
covered
rocking.
tonight, right? Yeah, it's $10. Okay.
That was just something I had to get off my chest.
I'm so glad you did.
As someone who let's just get into some general thoughts and criticisms just to wrap things up a little bit. As someone who struggles with resource management in all games, I never want to use anything that is finite. Whenever I could solve any problem at any point in this game, as anyone could, by building a device.
Yep.
But I never want to go into my inventory to use my Zonai devices to build something. It would make it so easy if I could. It almost makes me wonder if, like, once you find those dispensers that give you the devices, once you find the one that gives you rockets, what if you just had infinite rockets or 10 at a time and they had to replenish or something like that?
How would you use them more?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, okay.
100%.
Right.
Because it would just be like,
I didn't know how sick you were that you'd be like, well, I don't know. Maybe the machine would run out.
I still think you'd be able to build all these wild things that we're seeing online because you have access to 5 or 10 of anything at any given time. But it would also save me from being like, I don't know if I want to use 2 rockets right now on this thing just because I'm a little bit strapped for devices right now, you know?
So this is a tale from the beginning too, but it's just like, when I realized you got like 2 or 3 shots with these sticks before they break or whatever, right? And you're like, holy shit. Then I started thinking about the positive, which is Link taking like a 2x4 and breaking it over some guy's back. And I was like, that's way more fun than I'm like, oh, I got one more. Here, you son of a bitch. And just smack, it just shatters.
Reading the thing into like, no, it's not the durability wearing out. It's Link fucking going down, tearing off his
dieseled
sleeves.
up and just breaking wood over somebody's back. It's fucking great. It's like they're joining the NWO or something like that.
That's why my favorite weapon, I don't know if you found it yet in this game, is the steel chair. I love the steel chair.
Where's the option to light the barbed wire on fire? Spread out tacks.
Have you explored the graveyard area next to the first town?
Yes.
Yeah, you could grab the urn. The durability of this urn. Weapon durability, suck my dick.
Honest to God.
So much.
I get that it's like a necessary evil in the way that they have set up the game.
Yes.
With the inventory and stuff. We need a way to get rid of some of this inventory or for you to keep seeking out things.
Yes.
But holy God, it is sensitive. Like
it is too much.
Yeah.
Like going into a cave where there's a lot of rocks to mine and you have to go through 6 weapons to do it is like, just fucking stop. Everything breaks so fast.
Yes.
And it's like, again, I understand that the system they've set up relies on a constant cycling of weapons and making you feel like you have to use one. But when I have a really good weapon, it just makes me feel like I don't care about it and I never want to use it because it's going to break in like 7 swings anyway.
The game will end with it in my bag.
That's like it does in The Last of Us as well.
Exactly.
Resource management, I've never been a huge fan of. Weapon durability is just frustrating. If you could protect one weapon, just take one and protect it and that one doesn't break or something. I don't know what the solution is.
Yeah. Well, they started the game by breaking the Master Sword. So you're like, okay. So everything dies, I guess?
Everything dies. Honestly, if I could only protect one weapon, it might just be a big fuck off stick with a giant boulder on it. So I never have to worry about breaking down resources like getting flint and luminite and all that, or whatever it's called, all that stuff. Because I just hate going into a cavern and being like, there's all these rocks everywhere. I'm gonna have to break 7 weapons getting my way through it. It sucks. It's boring.
It does suck. But you know, it's just so funny we talk about this. Like once again, 9 out of 10, really good game. Is that this is a fun counterbalance to everything else that's out there right now.
Sure.
If you want to go listen how great it is, there's lots of articles, lots of websites, lots of podcasts for you, lots of videos. This is more fun of like, we can we're in on the circle here. Like, it's like when someone makes fun of your family and you're like, hey, fuck off.
Yeah.
But then you turn to your family, you're like, hey, fuck you.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, only I make fun of my family. Yeah,
we're in our circle here. So we're like, it's great. Okay, so what parts do you think we could work on? Though?
Well, and you say 9 out of 10. Like, to me, this is a 9.5 out of 10.
Okay,
and I would 100% accept a 10 out of 10 with these criticisms as well. This is like, in fact, I may even go so far as to give this game a 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
Knowing that it's my own personal issues that prevent it from like me wanting to give it higher than that. Like, maybe it is a 10. I personally would probably go 9.5 just for a little bit of subjectivity in there. So everything I'm saying, take it in context of that. 99% of the game I'm loving, but there's always something running through my head of like, they fucking why didn't they just this little bit make it easiasier for me?
Yeah, 100%. And that's the thing. We are nitpicking right now. So
yes,
man, it's fun nitpicking though.
We're definitely picking nits, and they're out there, and people just kind of, I don't know, they hate it a little bit. Yeah, I'm going through just some other criticisms that I've got there. It's a 100-hour game. Let's stop with the annoying pauses and dialogues and like the and then it's just like the bird guy at the stable like turning to look at you like, oh, the hero. And then he like turns back and the camera changes and he goes to the other person. They're like, it's like, just let's wrap this shit up, guys. It's 100 hours. We don't need these pauses and breaks.
This is why I don't like the story, Mikey.
This is why you're not the bird guy. Because the bird guy. I can't be the only person who, in every time you get to a Skyview tower, is mashing X, even though you can't skip those cutscenes.
Yes.
Just, I don't need to see the image of Link getting shot up into the same animation, the same character doing the same things, flying down in the air. Why can't I skip this cutscene? I don't have time for this shit. I've got a 100-hour game to beat.
Oh, 100%. I also would have loved to have been part of the production meeting on deciding when things get dialogue and when things don't.
Yes. I've never understood that.
There seems to be no pattern. That's the thing that kind of blows my mind. It's like, so somebody had to make the decision going like, this is important. Someone needs to say this out loud. We need 12 different languages.
Right.
We need every actor.
Right.
So like, please, this part. But like, why this part and not that part?
I don't know.
Or halfway through conversations. Say the first part, don't say the next part.
That happens a lot too. That's a weird JRPG thing. And when to everyone who says you're not reading the dialogue and that's why you don't like it, I'm not the only person that thinks that dialogue is worth less.
That's a good point.
Because they didn't think it was worth getting a voice actor to do it anyway. And if they say there's too much dialogue for voice actors to do, have you played Cyberpunk? Have you played Skyrim? Have you played all these games that have thousands of hours of dialogue in them?
Yeah.
It's doable.
Yeah. Grand Theft Auto,
exactly. Yeah. It's all doable. Red Dead Redemption, any of these games, it's all doable. It's all manageable. They chose not to, and I think that there are certain dialogue elements of this game that are just kind of like, just do it, just get it out there, and that's fine. But then don't, like, again, same thing as like, this isn't the most beautiful game ever made. Don't hear my criticism of that and think I don't know what I'm talking about because I'm pointing out something very obvious. It's wild.
Yes. Oh, God.
Generally speaking, looking back on everything that we've said, Andrew, what is your impression of Zelda? Is this a franchise you want to explore more of?
Well, I do. It is an incredibly unique franchise. That's the thing that I get. I do get the preciousness about the character and about the world.
Yeah.
There is one-on-one. There isn't games like this that are doing it on this scale and with this kind of like excellence.
Yeah.
Like it's really impressive. And especially going back to play Breath of the Wild a little bit too. It's like, yeah, these games kind of fucking kick ass.
Yeah.
Like I really want to play it because it's a nice change of pace where I'm playing baseball or Fortnite or something like that. And then there's this. And this is its own thing. It's not like I'm getting tired of it because I'm also playing whatever,
it would be like playing like Assassin's Creed and Horizon at the same time.
Yes.
Where it's like two similar things that are kind of different.
Totally.
But yeah.
You're like, I'm getting a little tired of this.
Yeah. This is different than most other formulas out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And so like, I really do like it. I think it's really excellent. And I'm so glad I got an excuse to play it. It's really cool.
I would love to assign you Link's Awakening, as just a different look at what Zelda can be, or if Wind Waker ever gets another remake, because as much as this game is impressive, as much as I love it, as much as everyone loves this game, it still is not what I know Zelda to have been. It may now be what Zelda is. I don't know.
Yeah, this might be it from here on out.
Maybe we never get another Ocarina of Time or Wind Waker style game. Maybe it's only this and then the odd offshoot. But it doesn't capture the essence of what Zelda is to me. I'm sure in storytelling it does, but in gameplay it definitely doesn't. So wild to me that is your own experience with Zelda and not having played the other things, but I'm sure you're not alone in that.
Yeah, no, I'm sure I'm not. Well, based on the sales, I'm sure there are people that have never played a Zelda game.
Yeah.
This game is selling like hotcakes.
Hotcakes.
Which you gotta think, how popular were hotcakes that is the expression that has stayed? Like, were they also not invented and then they were invented and then they sold like crazy?
And then all of a sudden, like, extra, read all about it. Yeah. Hotcakes, they're selling like, I don't have a reference point.
Yeah. We've never had something sell like this before. It's like selling like crazy. So,
any other thoughts, impressions, closing bits of your experiences with this game?
You know what? We will keep recapping.
I think so.
The further we go, and especially when we beat the game.
Yeah.
Which is still upcoming. I'm still probably a depressing amount of time away
from it. Oh my God, I know.
But I want to keep talking about it. And, there's been an embargo for so long about not talking about it because we wanted to get to the
self-imposed on the two of us.
Self-imposed that
by Nintendo.
Yeah, they put a gag order on us. So we could get to this episode, but now from here on out, we can kind of let it fly.
Yeah, I think so. And we'll keep kind of providing updates as we go as well. Recording a little bit out of order, so you may not hear about it for a couple weeks, but I don't don't think we need to have more to say about it for another couple weeks, just because we've kind of shot our load, just like we're talking to the Great
Jesus
Fairies.
Christ. Huh?
Oh.
Oh, those arrows.
I'll be playing this game and my partner will be in the other room and she'll just start laughing when she hears other characters making sounds. She's like, "What are you playing?"
It's like, good question.
Yeah, that's honestly,
I wish I had an answer for you.
I don't know, but I am rock hard.
What do you think? Any other final thoughts?
No, again, these are criticisms born out of love. I think the game is one of the most impressive games I've ever played. I still to this day cannot fathom how it is made. When it kept getting delayed, I was like, uh-oh, like what's going on here? Now I can't believe they made it as quickly as they did.
Yeah.
The amount of playtesting that would have had to go into a game like this is a playground that I think people are going to be able to explore for the next 6 years if they want. Like there's so much content in it. It's going to make an insane amount of videos. I can't wait to see how much better people get at creating things. Like the first couple weeks of this game, or the first couple days at least, the videos were like, look, here's a giant plank with a dick and the dick is shooting fire. Like, that's funny. Now it's like, here's a 1970s Cadillac that's flying through. Like, what the fuck is going on?
I like that we immediately did giant dick.
Yes.
We're going to crucify characters. Some 9/11 imagery, and you're like, wow, this is dark. And now it's like, yeah, you're right. Now it's like ship in a bottle level stuff. Where
it's
you're like,
wild.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's really impressive. So I kind of like fighting games. I don't think I'll ever get good enough to be able to contribute to that conversation, but I'm glad I get to watch videos about it because some people are really good at this game.
And so fast. Like within days of it coming out, they're like, oh yeah, look at this.
Yes, exactly.
It's unbelievable.
Very
so yes,
impressive.
let us know your thoughts of Tears of the Kingdom. It's a hell of a game. It's big, and there's tons of stuff we probably missed talking about. So please let us know. Retrograde Mikey and at Retrograde Andy and at Retrograde Pod. But until then, we love every single one of you, and we can't wait to talk to you soon. My name's Andrew Bascom, and with me as always is the bad boy of podcasting, Mr. Bebop himself,
Mikey Aaronworth.
This is the Retrograde Podcast.
Game over. Soar long. That's what the bird says.
Oh, soar long. Wow.
Furnished by Sad Styles Productions.
It's like how we make fun of 9/11 now.